Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. It's important to know that Satan has one goal, only one goal, and that's that you would have a broken life, and you'd never have deliverance, you'd never have freedom, you'd never have salvation, and you would never have an abundant life, and that you'd live separated from God, the source of life. That is Satan's goal. And the ultimate purpose of Satan is that you would end up eternally separated from God, eternally in hell. Now, he has obvious strategies that he uses. Temptations, which are situations that attract desires within us to do something that is against God's will. For example, murder. I have anger and I want to kill somebody, and I kill somebody. That's a temptation to act out on that anger. And you can follow through any of the normal emotions. Anger is a normal emotion. You can follow any of the normal emotions, lust, all normal emotions that every human being has, but the temptation to use them to hurt somebody else. Another obvious strategy Satan has is giving us different priorities. Money. Jesus said you can't serve God and money. Money first. Don't take a Sabbath day. Work first, God second. Even family first, God second. So putting something else, there's many, many things ahead that we could put ahead of God. But there are two strategies that I want to talk about today that are very subtle, very subtle. Ignorance misleads us, and fear. Ignorance and fear. Ignorance will mislead us, and fear will paralyze us. Those are both Satan's strategies. When I speak of ignorance, I mean ignorance of God's character. Ignorance of God's character will mislead us in our life, and fear in our life will paralyze us. And often those two strategies work together. They work hand in hand. So Jesus is teaching his disciples, Peter and the other ones, and we're kind of listening through Peter's ears, learning along with Peter. We're on a journey with Peter. What did Jesus teach? We've been doing that probably for the past 3 or 4 months on the encouraging word. We want to learn. It's always fascinated me. If I was one of the disciples, what would I be learning? And we can do that thanks to the Bible. We can place ourselves in that position. And that's what we're doing. We're listening from the position of Peter. So Jesus is towards the end of his ministry. He's about to be crucified, and he's spending a lot of time on one topic. He's telling, he gives a teaching on it, and then he tells 3 parables or stories to emphasize the teaching. And what he's teaching is that he's going to return. He's going to die, be buried, he's going to rise again, ascend to heaven, but he is coming back. So he's teaching that he's coming back. And he could come back at any time. No one knows the date or the hour, but it's what's known as imminent. Could happen at any time. So he teaches it, tells a story that we looked at yesterday, a story we're going to look at today. Today he tells them a story about bags of gold. If you're live in New Jersey, and I'm sorry to say this, some of the politicians have bags of gold in their house, and one of them is on trial right now for corruption. But these were bags of gold, and here's the story. There's a master who's going away on a long journey, traveling probably to another country, probably conducting business. And so he gives his servants bags of gold. He gives one of them 5 bags of gold. He gives another one 2 bags of gold. He gives the third one 1 bag of gold. And he says, each according to their ability. So he gave the first one 5 because he had the ability to work with 5. He gave the second 2 because he had the ability to work with 2, not with 5, but with 2. And he gave the one who he gave 1 to 1 bag of gold because he had the ability to work with 1. So that teaches me a few lessons right there. Life is not a competition. Who has the most? It's not a competition at all. And sometimes we think it is. And it also teaches me, and I love this teaching, that God never expects me to do more than I have the ability to do. If he's given me 2 bags of gold, all he expects me to do is be faithful with those 2 bags of gold. He doesn't expect me to work as if I had 5 bags of gold. Whatever God expects you to do, he's given you the ability to do. And it's not a matter of competition. That takes so much pressure off of me. Because if I'm going to do something, and if God's calling me to do something, I know he's given me the ability to do it. So he comes back. This is the theme of all these stories. He goes away, comes back, because Jesus is coming back. And he goes to the first guy, who had 5, and he gained 5 more. He worked with the 5, got 5 more. And the second guy comes, and he worked with the 2. Got the 2. And the master gave them both the same reward. He said, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come share your master's happiness. Happiness. So the 2 only had to do 2, which he did. The 5 had to do 5, which he did. They both had the ability. It was given them according to their ability. It was not a competition. And all they had to do was 2. He didn't have to do 5. So they both get the same reward. Don't miss that. The same reward, the same commendation from the master. Well done, good and faithful servant. Then we come to the one who received 1. And before I read the scripture, what do you think God expected him to do? To work with the 1 and have 1 more. What did he have the ability to do? To work with 1 and produce 1 more. He wouldn't have been compared to the one with 5 or compared to the one with 2. He had the ability to do what God asked him to do. Then the scripture for today, Matthew 25:24 through 25. Then the man who had received the 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. Satan's strategy of ignorance and fear prevented him from fulfilling God's purpose for his life. And my friends, ignorance of God's character and fear will hinder you from fulfilling God's purpose in your life. So it says, the one with the 1 bag of gold, he came, and listen to what he said. I knew that you were a hard man. That's ignorance. The master was not a hard master. He gave 5. He gave 5 to the one who had the ability for 5, 2 to the one who had the ability to 2, 1 to the one who had the ability to do 1. He was not a hard man. He was in ignorance of God's character. And if you're ignorant of what God is like, God's generous, God's loving, God's fair 100% of the time. He's not a hard master. Not at all. But he had that in his mind. And because of that, he says, so I was afraid. The ignorance led to fear. And the fear paralyzed him. He went out and hid God's gold in the ground. It paralyzed him. Fear paralyzes. Ignorance creates this distortion in us of what God is like. And it leads to fear. And it didn't end up well. It ended up with not his destiny was to have the master say, well done, good and faithful servant. And your destiny, my friends, is to have God say that to you. But the ignorance and the fear kept him from his destiny. And because of that, he was condemned by the master and broken and assigned to eternal damnation. So it's a warning for us. Remember, whatever God expects you to do, you have the ability to do it. Don't be afraid. Have courage. You have the ability. But Satan will bring that fear. God's a hard taskmaster, and you'll get that fear. So I don't want that to happen to me, and I don't want that to happen to you. So remember, God has given you the ability to do what he's called you to do. God bless you, and I will see you on Friday.